How far is too far when an action movie stops entertaining you and starts testing your nerves? In 2025 and 2026, action cinema is getting nastier, bloodier, and far less polite. These are not soft popcorn rides. These are bone-cracking, revenge-fueled, war-scarred, survival-driven films built to leave bruises. But one title on this list may push graphic action so hard it becomes impossible to look away. Number 15. Den of Thieves 2, Pantera 2025. Some crime movies whisper about loyalty. This one loads the magazine and lets betrayal do the talking. Den of Thieves 2, Pantera, drags Big Nick O'Brien out of Los Angeles and into Europe's diamond underworld, where the rules feel colder, cleaner, and somehow more dangerous. What makes this sequel work is not just the heist mechanics, but the uneasy tension between hunters and thieves who almost respect each other too much. Gerard Butler gives the film that bruised, bulldog energy again, while O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s Donnie feels sharper, smoother, and harder to predict. The violence here is not superhero violence. It is tactical, blunt, and street-level, the kind where every gun drawn feels like someone has already made peace with ruining a life. The movie's impact comes from pressure, border crossings, criminal alliances, and the constant feeling that one wrong move will turn a score into a funeral. It is not the bloodiest title here, but it earns its place through ruthless tension. Number 14. A Working Man, 2025. Jason Statham does not enter a movie like this to negotiate. He enters like a closed fist looking for a door. A Working Man takes the familiar rescue thriller setup and gives it a harder, meaner edge through Levon Cade, a soldier-turned-construction worker pulled back into violence after his employer's daughter is taken by a dangerous criminal network. The story is simple on the surface, but that simplicity is exactly why it hits. There is no maze of clever twists to soften the brutality. There is only a man with old skills, a personal code, and a target list that keeps getting uglier. David Ayer's direction gives the action a grimy, working-class texture, while the screenplay connection to Sylvester Stallone adds that old-school revenge movie muscle. Statham plays Levon like a man trying not to become the weapon everyone needs him to be, which makes the violence feel less stylish and more inevitable. It is blunt force entertainment, and sometimes that is exactly what action fans came to see. Number 13. The Accountant 2, 2025. The most dangerous man in the room is not always the loudest one. Sometimes he is the one doing the math. The Accountant 2 brings back Christian Wolff, Ben Affleck's controlled, brilliant, and lethal problem solver, and pairs him again with John Bernthal's Brax for a sequel that leans harder into brotherhood, conspiracy, and physical danger. What separates this from ordinary action thrillers is the contrast. One side is cold logic, the other is chaotic violence. And when those two forces finally move together, the film becomes sharper than expected. The plot begins with a murder and a message that pulls Christian into another deadly puzzle. But the emotional hook is really the damaged connection between two brothers who understand violence better than vulnerability. The action is not cartoonish. It is efficient, heavy, and personal, built around men who do not waste motion when survival is on the line. The film works because it turns calculation into suspense and brotherly damage into firepower. Number 12. The Old Guard 2, 2025. Immortality sounds glamorous until the movie reminds you that endless life also means endless wounds. The Old Guard 2 brings Andy and her team of ancient warriors back into a world where dying is complicated, loyalty is dangerous, and every fight carries centuries of pain behind it. Charlize Theron returns with that exhausted warrior intensity, giving Andy the feeling of someone who has survived too many battlefields to believe in clean victories anymore. The sequel's action has a fantasy edge, but its emotional violence is what gives it weight. These are not ordinary fighters chasing glory. They are people trapped between myth and mission, forced to keep protecting humanity even when humanity barely knows they exist. With new threats rising and old consequences returning, the film becomes less about invincibility and more about what happens when the warriors who cannot die start losing the things that made them human. It may not be the nastiest film here, but its sword-swinging, gun-blazing mythology gives the list a bruised, immortal heartbeat. Number 11. Diablo 2025. Some action films are built around explosions. Diablo is built around bodies hitting the floor with terrifying precision. Scott Adkins and Marco Zaror are not here to pose like action stars. They are here to remind viewers that martial arts cinema can still feel raw, dangerous, and brutally physical. The story follows Chris Chaney, an ex-con pulled into a deadly mission involving the daughter of a powerful gangster. But the real attraction is the combat language. Every kick, counter, grapple, and impact feels designed by people who understand how to make a fight look painful without drowning it in empty noise. That is why Diablo feels different from glossy studio action. It has a lean, stripped-down energy, closer to a pressure cooker than a blockbuster machine. Adkins brings the battered determination, Zaror brings predatory menace, and the film turns their clash into the kind of hard-edged action fans chase for years. It is not trying to be elegant, it is trying to leave a mark. Number 10. Novocaine, 2025. This is the rare action movie where the joke lands at the exact same moment as the injury. Novocaine turns Jack Quaid's Nathan Kane into one of the strangest heroes of modern action. A gentle bank employee who cannot feel pain, suddenly forced into a violent rescue mission after the woman he cares about is taken during a robbery. That medical condition could have been a gimmick, but the movie weaponizes it into a whole personality. Nathan is not invincible. He can still be broken, burned, smashed, stabbed, and destroyed. He just does not get the warning signals everyone else gets. That makes every action scene both funny and uncomfortable because the audience reacts before the character does. The film balances romance, comedy, and graphic injury with a surprisingly clever rhythm, turning pain into slapstick without making the stakes disappear. It is messy, weird, and far more violent than its playful surface suggests. For action fans, that combination makes it a bloody little surprise. Number 9. Havoc, 2025. The city in Havoc does not feel alive, it feels infected. This is the kind of crime thriller where every hallway looks like a trap, every deal feels cursed, and every man with a gun seems one bad decision away from total collapse. Tom Hardy plays a bruised detective, dragged through a criminal underworld after a drug deal goes violently wrong, and the movie uses that setup like a match dropped into gasoline. What makes Havoc dangerous is not just the action, it is the atmosphere. The violence feels dirty, fast, and desperate, the way street-level chaos should feel when there are no clean heroes left. Gareth Evans, known for turning close-quarters combat into pure panic, brings that same relentless pressure here, making fights feel less like choreography and more like survival. Hardy's character is not gliding through danger like a perfect action machine. He looks tired, cornered, and furious, which makes every collision hit harder. This is not polished superhero damage. It is urban action with cracked knuckles, bad lighting, corrupt power, and bodies dropping because everyone waited too long to do the right thing. Number 8. Fight or Flight, 2025. A plane is already a nightmare location for violence because there is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and absolutely no room for mistakes. Fight or Flight takes that simple fear and turns it into a trapped airborne bloodbath, with Josh Hartnett thrown into a flight full of killers, targets, secrets, and escalating chaos. The brilliance of the setup is the pressure. On the ground, action heroes can crash through alleys, warehouses, streets, and rooftops. In the air, every fight becomes claustrophobic. A punch sends someone into a seat. A weapon changes hands in seconds. A narrow aisle becomes a battlefield. The film understands that confinement makes violence feel nastier because the audience feels trapped alongside the characters. Hartnett gives the story a worn-down, unpredictable edge, playing a man who seems constantly one step away from either saving himself or making everything worse. This is not elegant action. It is frantic, mean, and sometimes darkly funny in the way chaos can be funny only after the shock hits. Fight or Flight earns its place because it turns a commercial flight into a pressure cooker where survival is not guaranteed, and landing may be the least dangerous part. Number 7. The Running Man, 2025. A game show should not feel like an execution, but that is exactly the nightmare power of The Running Man. This version brings back one of action cinema's most brutal ideas, a society so addicted to spectacle that it turns human survival into entertainment. The premise is terrifying because it does not feel as distant as it should. Contestants run, audiences watch, sponsors profit, and violence becomes content. That is what makes the film more than a chase movie. It is action wrapped in social anger. The battles, escapes, and deadly confrontations matter because the system itself is the real villain, cold, commercial, and hungry for ratings. Edgar Wright's involvement gives the story an edge of style and momentum, but the darker hook is the world around the action. Every pursuit feels like a public punishment. Every arena feels designed to strip away dignity before the body even falls. This is the kind of film that works because it gives viewers adrenaline and discomfort at the same time. The Running Man is not just about surviving hunters. It is about surviving a culture that turns pain into primetime entertainment, and that makes its violence sting harder. Number 6. Nobody 2, 2025. Hutch Mansell is dangerous because he looks like the man you would ignore in a grocery store, and that is exactly why Nobody 2 works. Bob Odenkirk returns to the role with the same exhausted, middle-aged menace that made the first film such a surprise. A family man with a buried history of violence and a terrifying ability to switch from quiet frustration to full-body destruction. The sequel understands the appeal. Hutch is not a glossy assassin in a designer suit. He is a tired man pushed too far, and that makes the action feel rougher, funnier, and more satisfying. Every fight carries that strange mix of absurdity and pain, where ordinary spaces suddenly become battlegrounds and everyday objects become weapons of desperation. What gives Nobody 2 its bite is the contrast between normal life and savage retaliation. The movie plays with the fantasy that the most forgettable person in the room might secretly be the most dangerous one. But beneath the bruises and broken furniture, there is also a darker idea. Once violence has shaped a man, peace may only be a temporary disguise. This sequel earns its spot by turning suburban quiet into a ticking bomb. Number 5. Warfare, 2025. Some war films chase glory. Warfare seems more interested in trapping you inside the cost. This is not the kind of battlefield movie that pauses for speeches or polishes combat into heroic spectacle. It is raw, immediate, and suffocating, built around the terrifying confusion of soldiers trying to survive a mission that keeps tightening around them. What makes Warfare so powerful is its refusal to make danger feel clean. The action is not presented like entertainment first. It feels like pressure, noise, fear, and split-second decisions made under impossible stress. Every movement matters because one mistake can change everything. The film's realism gives it a punishing emotional weight, making the audience feel the exhaustion as much as the impact. Instead of turning combat into fantasy, it strips away the distance and leaves viewers inside the uncertainty. That is why this entry stands apart from the revenge thrillers and crime films on the list. Its violence is not stylish punishment or action movie release. It is survival under fire, where courage looks less like confidence and more like continuing to move while fear is already in your bones. Warfare is not easy viewing, and that is exactly its strength. Number 4. From the world of John Wick, Ballerina, 2025. Some revenge stories burn slowly. Ballerina walks into the room already carrying the smoke. Set inside the same elegant, lethal universe as John Wick, this film gives Ana de Armas a revenge mission soaked in ritual, discipline, and punishment. The hook is simple but deadly, a trained assassin searching for the people responsible for destroying her family. But in the Wick world, revenge is never just personal. It becomes currency, tradition, and a death sentence signed in blood. What makes Ballerina so compelling is the contrast between beauty and brutality. The title suggests grace, but the action is anything except delicate. Every movement feels sharpened by pain. Every confrontation carries the weight of a woman who was shaped by loss before she ever chose violence. Ana de Armas brings a different energy from Keanu Reeves, colder in some moments, more vulnerable in others, but still deadly enough to belong in this world. The choreography matters because this franchise has trained viewers to expect impact, precision, and consequence. Guns, blades, fists, and bodies all become part of a violent rhythm. Ballerina earns its place because it does not just expand the John Wick universe. It proves revenge can still feel stylish, tragic, and punishingly personal when placed in the hands of someone with nothing left to lose. Number 3. The Toxic Avenger, 2025. This is not the superhero movie that politely saves the city and smiles for the cameras. The Toxic Avenger crawls out of the chemical sludge with a broken mop, a mutant body, and a nasty sense of justice. Macon Blair's update takes one of cult cinema's strangest anti-heroes and pushes him into a modern world that feels rotten enough to deserve him. The story follows a weak, overlooked man transformed by toxic waste into something hideous, powerful, and impossible to ignore. That transformation is the whole point. This is action filtered through body horror, black comedy, and class anger, where the hero is not polished, handsome, or marketable. He is grotesque. And somehow, that makes him more honest than most caped saviors. The violence has that grimy cult movie flavor, where punishment becomes exaggerated, messy, and absurdly satisfying. But beneath the gore-soaked comedy, there is a sharper idea. Sometimes the world only notices the powerless after they become dangerous. Peter Dinklage's presence gives the role a surprising emotional charge, turning the monster into more than a joke. The Toxic Avenger belongs this high because it is not trying to be clean entertainment. It is ugly, loud, rebellious, and proud of every disgusting second. And in a year full of safe franchise action, that makes it strangely refreshing. Number 2. Sisu, Road to Revenge, 2025. Some men refuse to die because survival is instinct. The man in Sisu, Road to Revenge, refuses because revenge still has unfinished business. The original Sisu became a cult favorite by turning one stubborn fighter into a nightmare for everyone foolish enough to stand in his path. And this sequel carries that myth forward with even more punishment, fury, and old-school action madness. What makes this series hit so hard is its brutal simplicity. There is no need for endless explanation when the central idea is this strong. One nearly unstoppable man, a trail of enemies, and a world that keeps learning too late that he is not ordinary. The violence feels almost legendary, like a war story exaggerated around a fire until every wound becomes part of the myth. But the appeal is not just carnage. It is the satisfaction of watching cruelty meet someone even more relentless. Sisu, Road to Revenge, understands the primal power of action cinema. Audiences want pressure, pain, and release. They want the villain to feel untouchable until the hero proves otherwise. The film earns its number 2 spot because it strips revenge action down to its rawest form. Not speeches, not glamour, not mercy. Just grit, survival, and the terrifying belief that one man's will can become more dangerous than an army. Number 1. Mortal Kombat 2, 2026. Some action franchises promise violence. Mortal Kombat 2 is built on the expectation that violence is the main event. That is why it takes the number 1 spot. This is not just another martial arts fantasy sequel. It comes from a universe where combat is mythology. Every fighter carries a violent legacy, and the audience arrives waiting for the moment when the battle crosses the line from intense to unforgettable. The first modern Mortal Kombat film leaned into brutal fatalities, supernatural powers, and tournament-style carnage, but the sequel has even more pressure on it because fans already know what they want. Bigger fights, harder impacts, more iconic characters, and no softening of the franchise's ruthless identity. The appeal is almost gladiatorial. Viewers are not watching only to see who wins. They are watching to see how far the film is willing to go. That curiosity creates the hook. Every matchup becomes a promise, every arena becomes a threat, and every familiar name carries the possibility of a shocking finish. Mortal Kombat 2 stands above the rest because its violence is not an accessory to the story. It is the language of the world itself. If the film fully embraces that legacy, it could become the most graphic, crowd-pleasing, and brutally entertaining action spectacle of 2026. And that's the brutal edge of action cinema in 2025 and 2026. Not just bigger explosions, but harder hits, darker worlds, and heroes who survive by becoming almost as dangerous as the villains chasing them. Which of these movies looks the most intense to you? Drop your pick below, because the bloodiest title may still be coming.